Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Fox News' Peter Ducey queried President Biden about his relationship with his old friend, President Xi, and what he has been able to do with respect to his old friend, President Xi, at the G7 in terms of getting Western nations to take perhaps more of a jaundiced eye when looking to the Far East. This is what Biden had to say about that. Not my friend, although he has referred to him as old friend, President Xi, before.
You've spoken many times about how you have spent perhaps more time with President Xi than any other world leader. So is there going to become a time where you might call him old friend to old friend and ask him to open up China to the World Health Organization investigators who are trying to get to the bottom of COVID-19?
Let's get something straight. We know each other well. We're not old friends. It's just pure business.
So I guess my question would be, you've said that you were going to press China. You signed on to the G7 communique that said the G7 were calling on China to open up to let the investigators in. But China basically says they don't want to be interfered with anymore. So what happens now?
The impact, the world's attitude toward China as it develops. China's trying very hard to project itself as a responsible and very, very forthcoming nation. That they are trying very hard to talk about how they're taking and helping the world in terms of COVID-19 and vaccines, and they're trying very hard. Look, certain things you don't have to explain to the people of the world. They see the results. Is China really actually trying to get to the bottom of this? One thing we did discuss, as I told you, in the EU and at the G7 and with NATO. What we should be doing, and what I'm going to make an effort to do, is rally the world to work on what is going to be the physical mechanism available to detect early on the next pandemic and have a mechanism by which we can respond to it and respond to it early. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. We need to do that. Thank you.
I wanted to get to that last piece because it's such the politicians' fail-safe, which is we're preparing for the next thing. We've learned the lessons. They've learned no lessons. And we're going to set up some sort of mystical mechanism at some point in preparation, and that's where we're hard at work. Now stop asking me questions, and I'll wait till the presidential debates for my reelection to talk about how we're making nebulous progress on this mechanism to prepare for the next pandemic. Preparation. The government is always forward-looking.
Yeah, I've got your back. Yeah.
Problem solvers. They're rolling up their sleeves and they're getting around tables and they're going to figure this all out. But isn't that just so much propaganda that we buy over and over again? To address that question and a few others, pleased to be joined again by Joakim Book, who's a visiting scholar at the American Institute for Economic Research. Joakim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, Dan and Amy. It's a pleasure to be back.
Preparation, just a little bit more preparation, and we can avoid the traps that we fell into next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this idea that, we just need a government or a competent government official, and they can just plan everything out and make sure that we have redundancies for everything, and we have plans in order, and whatever happens, we're secure. They've figured it out. It's really? You guys know better than anybody else what's about to happen?
Right. And so, that's number one. And then number two, and you wrote about Neil Ferguson's latest book, Neil Ferguson of the Hoover Institute, not the Imperial College of London, Neil Ferguson. Big difference. Doom, and he focuses a good bit on the politics of catastrophe, which is the subtitle. So he sort of takes the position from my read of it is, you can't just prepare for one, you have to prepare for multiple things that oftentimes, as we saw with the COVID pandemic, you have political upheaval that is attendant to a natural catastrophe, in part because of the response to that natural catastrophe. But isn't as much as I respect him, isn't Neil Ferguson falling into that same sort of magical thinking trap about better people that are less political in political offices can produce better results. I mean, frankly, there's just not a lot of support for that case, I don't believe.
Yeah, I don't know if that's his actual position. Maybe. I don't read that into the book anyways. I do take a couple of very interesting things that he lists. I remember one portion specifically where he lists all the different U.S. agencies and the plans that they had in place for pandemics or influenza panics or like health crisis like this. And it's like all of the big name agencies, the CDC, Homeland Security, FEMA, the Department of Defense, every one of these agencies had a plan before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened and nobody followed those plans and we still had chaos.
Well,
so it's even this idea that you can have a government filled with very competent and clever bureaucrats making a plan for every kind of contingency, what's going to happen, still doesn't help you once the disaster strikes.
Well, then what's your opinion on the lockdowns? Because that wasn't part of the plan, correct?
I have lots of opinions on the lockdowns, and I've written about them for a year. My impression of them was that we exaggerated. We panicked. We exaggerated, and then we just handed power to almost authoritarian governments to just do what they wanted on very little evidence and on insufficient evidence, and we didn't have an exit plan. And now we're sort of stuck in this limbo phase where we don't really know we can't go back in time, right? So we can't undo what we've done already, but how do we get out of it? We don't really know, and we don't really know how. It's like what's the proper trade-offs? The UK is a very interesting example in that right now. It's like, okay, we've vaccinated 60% plus of the population, but still we need to wait with opening up most of the restrictions because we have some idea that COVID has to go to zero. And it's like, well, but we've been pushing the needle all the time. We've been pushing the sort of the target. First, we just wanted to make sure that most people are safe, and then we want to vaccinate a lot of people, and then we want zero COVID. But you never go to the extremes. It's kind of crazy. It's like, how do we ever get out of this? I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question of my opinion on the lockdowns, but we just did something that we had never planned for, or some people had planned for, and we didn't really know how to do it, and we don't know how to get out of it. And now we're sort of stuck in between.
Well, it seems to me that one of the things that, and this is my quibble with Ferguson too, is that sort of the doom of politics and infusing itself into all of these areas. Well, right, but that's intrinsic to this discussion. It's like talking about how do you get the wet out of water. You're not going to get politics out of government and political decisions made by politicians. So the only real answer, functional answer, is the diffusion of power. And one of the real tragedies coming out of the lockdown right now is that you've seen the consolidation of power at the national level. CDC recommendations become, wisdom that was etched in tablets brought down from on high that everybody needs to synchronize with the CDC. And there were very few examples of federalism. I don't know if maybe this was the last throes of federalism thanks to places like Florida and South Dakota, but otherwise there was alignment from top to bottom based on the pronouncements from one doctor at one agency providing political cover for the politicians, and it just went all the way from top to bottom very quickly.
Yeah, and then the only question that you need to ask for that is, what if you're wrong? What do you do if when you have a centralized structure and almost one person at the top or one group of people at the top making orders for 330 million people or more, then you really, really, really want to be sure that they are making the best possible decisions. If they're wrong, then everybody suffers from those decisions. Like the entire idea of federalism, right, is that you have a bunch of different jurisdictions competing or trying different things and doing what they think is right for their local constituents in their local states. And this is the opposite. And what you get from a decentralized system like that, at the bottom of an idea of federalism, is you get a bunch of different people trying, and then you can sort of see what works and what doesn't. And you get some kind of experimentation, and then we can learn from each other. And then people who prefer one or the other can move. Whereas in a federal system where one person decides, you just get one size fits all, and that's it.
Yeah,
you don't get any experimentation. We have a struggle even knowing what's working because we don't have a control group. And you're just stuck. Everybody's doomed to the same thing, and you really, really want the guy to make the right call. If he doesn't,
right. And so I don't want to get into sort of the great man fallacy or great woman fallacy either. It's sort of a different iteration of the right people in charge. But I mean, we're a culture now that just careens from one moral panic to the other, and that's probably going to only be exacerbated coming out of this. And so it doesn't need to be one person making the decision. It's one person making an announcement, and then that being essentially enforced by the most hysterical elements of the culture, even against good sense and popular opinion. And your colleague over there, Jeffrey Tucker, writing about the lessons of the pandemic and the lockdowns, I should say specifically, he makes this great point. In the United States, there was one state that fully resisted apart from closing schools for 2 weeks. That was South Dakota. One state, even Florida. One state that fully resisted except for a 2-week closure of schools was South Dakota. That does not bode well about for the notion that we have this subsidiarity, this diffusion of power, and these laboratories of democracy and sort of independent thinking going on so we can compare and contrast who's building the better mousetrap.
Yeah, it really doesn't, and it's a very scary, risky experiment that we're doing. We're placing all our eggs in one basket like that. What if we're wrong?
Well, and the other thing that Tucker points out too, I mean, it's remarkable. The sources of resistance to tyranny come from unexpected places. It was Tanzania, Sweden, Japan, Taiwan, Nicaragua, and Belarus. Even Russia opened up sooner than the United States with much fewer stringencies. He writes, if I had told you in 2019 to move to Nicaragua right away to preserve your freedom, you would have thought me crazy. And here we are. Yeah, I mean, it's just, woo. Nicaragua.
Yeah, I wrote about this a lot. I'm natively from Sweden, and I have family there, and it's like we have this idea, especially in the English-speaking world, that Sweden is this well-functioning, very nice, egalitarian, almost socialist country, and everything just works, And then all of a sudden, we seem to be the black sheep. We seem to be the villain, the odd one out.
Yeah.
We were the villains, right? We were doing the wrong thing for not locking down as hard as everybody else did. And then, it took a couple of months, and then our politicians sort of gave in and then started doing what everybody else was doing. What was really interesting about that is that it wasn't that Sweden didn't do anything at all. They did, all the stuff that everybody else did, half ours, basically. And then when it sort of turned around in the fall last year, if I remember correctly, Sweden made a little more stringent stuff, and then most of its neighbors removed most of their restrictions. So it's it was the crazy, exaggerating countries that came down to Sweden's level a little bit, and Sweden made it a little bit worse and closed down a little bit more. So we sort of met halfway. And from a federalist sort of point of view, an experimenting sort of point of view, that's what you want, right? You want a bunch of different jurisdictions trying different things, and then you can learn from each other, and then you get some kind of synthesis. Not necessarily a good one. In this example, I don't know, but at least you get different states and countries doing different things.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Sweden never masked up, right? I know the school kids never wore masks.
No. Yes and no. So in the beginning, almost nobody did. I remember in the spring when everyone was first, on and on about masks and lockdowns and panicking. I think I saw probably 3 masks in all of the spring of 2020. But then maybe in the fall, when they started locking down again and people were reading international news and seeing that this was a thing everywhere else, more people started wearing them, from what I could tell. And then I remember in December, a lot of public transport and local governments like that demanded that you wear a mask. So it was when everybody else had sort of figured out that masks don't do very much and they don't seem to be super effective and don't seem to prevent, they don't seem to be the panacea that we thought that they were, then Sweden started demanding that people wear them. And it was like completely upside down.
All right, next time I'm going to head over to Nicaragua, restart the Contras. I mean, Daniel Ortega's back.
Right.
We can bring the Contras back, and I'm going to Nicaragua. The hell with it. Joakim,
how are you going to know?
Well, I'm going to, as soon as Tony Fauci says that there's nothing to worry about, then I'm out of here. That's how I'll know.
Yeah, but how do you know where to go? You don't know which country is going to be the next Nicaragua or whatever.
Well, I'm just hoping that Nicaragua will, under the Marxist Daniel Ortega, will continue to have a better response to COVID than we will. Oh, gosh. Joakim Book, visiting scholar, American Institute for Economic Research. Thanks, Joakim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I am a retired nurse. I thought being hungry all the time was a part of being human. And no matter what I ate, I wasn't satisfied. I thought in order to maintain any kind of decent weight, I just have to always be hungry. I had decided no more miracle cures in my house. But I kept hearing about Balance of Nature, and I thought maybe one more try. Because all that other stuff just wasted my money. And the first day that I took Balance of Nature, that was gone. I enjoy my food just like always, but I don't have to keep eating to be satisfied. So I am so thankful for Balance of Nature.
Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order. Call 1-800-2468-751 or go to balanceofnature.com and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code Chicago.
If you have school-age children, you're thinking about summertime, not back to school, but before you know it, time to go back to school. Can you say with confidence you know what school will look like for your child this fall? Will they be back in the classroom 5 days a week? Well, thousands of private school students were in person in school for the past school year, will be again next year. So if you've ever thought about private school but didn't think you could afford it, think again. The most affordable way to send your child to a private Christian school is through halfpriceschools.com. Right now, vouchers are available for 50% off the normal tuition for private schools across Chicagoland, including Trinity Lutheran in Lombard, Lake County Baptist in Waukegan, Faith Evangelical Lutheran in Antioch, Chicago Hope Academy on the west side of the city, and many more. So go to halfpriceschools.com, search for a private school near you, purchase the voucher today, then prepare to send your child back to school this fall in classroom to a school you can trust. Visit halfpriceschools.com today. Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Paul Jenkins, owner of Bancroft Architects and Engineers, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business providing design